Welcome to the F3 Podcast,
where we talk food, football, and fantasy football.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the F3 Podcast. We're excited to talk about some exciting things today, and we're going to get into a little bit of what's happening around the NFL. We're going to talk a little bit about Baltimore and the Ravens and how incredible a team, and look at the food scene in that area, and then get on to a little bit about what's happening in the world of fantasy football. All right, so Erin, how are you doing today?
Good. I can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief compared to week 8 last week. Week 9 is looking better, both for a lot of interesting games and for fantasy football.
Well, let's get into it. Let's dive into the season and see what's happening in the NFL. What have you got for us there?
It has been definitely an interesting week, I think especially compared to last week, but maybe that's a little bit more personal because I had a lot of bye teams last week sit out. But I mean, let's start off with one of the games that we watched this afternoon on Sunday were the Buffalo and the Kansas City game. That was always interesting. Mahomes just did not look good at all.
He looked angry.
He looked upset. Absolutely. Yeah. I think this is the 5th straight game in a row that Buffalo has beat Kansas City, and Josh Allen has just been stepping up to the plate. Like, it's incredible. He's having a really good season. He's a, incredible quarterback, extremely consistent, and his performance versus that of Patrick Mahomes was pretty remarkable, and it was a really fun game to watch. So that one definitely caught my eye today.
Do you feel like Patrick Mahomes has peaked, or is this a...
I don't think, and I know we talked about this last week, I don't necessarily think he peaked. I just think the team around him is getting older, and they haven't invested as much in surrounding him with really strong players, particularly receivers. And they're getting older. They're not as strong as they used to be. So I think that's personally the issue I have with Kansas City.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's look on to some other teams out there in the league. What else is happening out there?
Well, right now we've got the Sunday night game going on as we are recording this.
Exactly.
Yeah, Washington versus Seattle. And
this is a big one for you.
It is. Personally, it is a big one for me. I mean, Sam Darnold is really proving me wrong. At the beginning of the season, I did not want him as the quarterback for Seattle. I just didn't think he had much left on him, especially after last year's performance with Minnesota. He started off so strong and then just kind of died in the end of it. He is proving that, it is coaching and team fit is everything. He is looking pretty incredible. Even watching the broadcast, just a few minutes ago, I heard even the word MVP tossed around, which Sam Darnold and MVP are two words that I would never associate, but we're only at halftime, but this game is looking remarkable. He is looking very impressive. The Seahawks are looking very impressive. So that's a team to watch after a couple of years.
They've definitely been coming out,
quite the performance. Right? Absolutely.
So let's go on to some earlier games today.
Yeah.
Because I know there was one game that kind of disappointed me. Was looking at
which one is that?
The old Lions, Detroit.
Oh yes, the Lions. Yeah, I know that they're sort of your team close to your heart.
Well, I'm a BC Lions fan, so Detroit Lions kind of work
Translates.
for me.
Geographically, name yes.
And I just loved last year how they were kind of that underdog, and they just were superior, right? Like they couldn't lose, right? Like, well, until it came to playoffs, but still, they were such a team to compete with, and then. This year, it kind of just, I don't know what's happening out there.
I don't know if it's, Jared Goff certainly isn't having the season that he had last year. I picked him as one of my fantasy quarterbacks, and we can get around to that, but I actually benched him this week because his numbers weren't producing. He was good, but he wasn't great. And I think that was surprising this year for sure. So I actually benched him for his trading partner, Matthew Stafford. So Stafford really produced some good numbers today as well. So I was really happy with that decision.
Yeah, no, that's always good.
Yeah.
Any other games you want to talk about here?
I mean, Indianapolis, they're doing remarkably well. It's an interesting team to keep an eye on. So we'll see how their season goes. I have to say, personally, I'm a little bit disappointed in the Raiders. Not surprised per se, but disappointed because I really think Pete Carroll is a remarkable coach. And I think I had a lot of hope in him, looking to see how he might be able to transform that team. It's been a bit disappointing. They had a couple of close games, but kind of keeping an eye on them to see what the rest of the season will bring for them.
Okay, and now we got Monday Night Football tomorrow.
We do.
What are your predictions on that one? What are you looking at there?
Oh, I think, so we have Dallas and Arizona on Monday Night Football. maybe not the most exciting game.
You're not getting excited about that one?
I mean, they're two mediocre teams. They're nothing remarkable. Personally, I hope Arizona loses because that just, helps the Seahawks in their division in the NFC North. But I'm not really excited about either team. I would maybe give Dallas the advantage, but again, wouldn't be surprised if Arizona won. Both two kind of mediocre teams.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Not the makings of what you want for a Monday Night Football game, but we get what we get.
Yeah. Anyways, a good game on Monday night. So
Absolutely.
After a long day of work, coming home to a game.
It works. I'll take football any night of the week.
All right. Now it's time to move on. Let's go to our team of the week. We're talking about the Baltimore Ravens.
Yes.
What do we have to talk about this team? Where do we want it? Why are the Ravens? What are they?
Well, they're it is an interesting team because they were an expansion team. They're really not that old of a team. I believe that they came into the league in 96. Oddly enough, I know the CFL had their expansion team in Baltimore, the Baltimore Colts, I believe that was when they ventured into the U.S. along with the team in Louisiana and Las Vegas. So it's kind of funny how, 20 years later, the NFL expands into these, at least two of the three teams that the CFL expanded to into the U.S. But Baltimore is a relatively new team into the league. They've always been pretty good for the most part, especially within the last maybe decade or so. They won the Super Bowl in 2012, I believe it was.
Which is pretty impressive for a new team. Right?
It absolutely is. And, they've got an pretty incredible, we can talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson for sure. I've always been quite impressed with him, but their coach, John Harbaugh, is, a remarkably good coach. He's got some incredible football lineage in terms of coaching. His brother is the coach of the LA Chargers. And I think they've got a pretty remarkable team that have definitely gone quite deep into the playoffs the last few years, and wouldn't be surprised, again, if they went deep again this year, primarily because of their quarterback.
Right. Yeah. So, let's talk about the quarterback there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lamar Jackson is one to watch ever since he got drafted not that long ago. He's, been in the league for, a couple of years for sure now, 5 years or 6 years or so, but I think he's on his second contract at least. He is certainly not created, but revolutionized a rushing quarterback. He is incredible on his feet. As great as his passing arm is, he is, a dual threat quarterback 100%. And that's what he's known for. And that's what he's, I think, always will be known for, is absolutely incredible. So it's really hard to defend against Jackson, which has made him so successive.
When you're defense there, what do you do?
Do you
look for the throw, or is he
that's the biggest threat? And that's one of the things that has taken, the Ravens as far as they have, and with their success in the last, particularly since Jackson's come on. They had Joe Flacco before, oddly enough, who's still in the league. Jackson's just incredible quarterback. That being said, as incredibly as he is, both on his feet and in the air, the downside to being a rushing quarterback, especially him, because he's so nimble, he's so fast, is that the risk of injury could go up. And he's not as young as he first is. When he first got into the league, the more you run, the more susceptible you are to, just getting hit. And that's my biggest fear, I will have to say. I'm a huge fan of Lamar Jackson. I think he's an incredible talent, a rare talent, but I sadly would not be surprised, especially as he gets older, that, I never want to wish injury on anyone, but, he's putting himself in extremely vulnerable situations.
Well, you're scared to see him get hurt.
Absolutely.
Field,
And he is such a, running is such a huge part of his game that's always something that I think about when I watch the Ravens play.
Well, let's talk about some of the other players on the team. Is there any other names that jump out at you that you're like, this is a person that I would put on my fantasy team, or this is a person that, has some great potential?
Well, I think just talking about kind of big picture, I mentioned before, their coach, I think he's an absolutely incredible coach. And I think he's really, really brought the team around. Derrick Henry, their running back, 100%. If I had to pick another running back on my fantasy team, 100%. They've got Hopkins as one of their receivers. One of their tight ends, Mark Andrews, a really good tight end as well. So they've, perhaps unlike the Chiefs that have really helped their quarterback, I think the Ravens have had definitely some success in sort of beefing up their offense, giving Lamar options rather than just having to find a hole to run. If he needs to throw, if he needs to pass, there's definitely some really, really high quality receivers there.
So he's got the backers and defense.
Yeah, I mean, for a little while, that was sometimes they needed some work a few years ago. I think they've come around. I think they're doing quite well in the league. And I think overall they've got a very well-rounded team. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see them go deep again this year.
They can definitely carry their own. And it's a team to be keeping an eye off in playoff time.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
They always seem to come out, They
do, and deservedly so.
Well, is it time to shift on to food?
I'm hungry.
Yeah. So where's the stadium for Baltimore?
Maryland.
Yes.
That's like one of the smaller states in the U.S. East Coast.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you know what? This is a town that, when you're outside the stadium, that's the place you're going to smell the charcoal smoke, maybe a little Old Bay in the air. You're going to see people waving the old purple flags, flipping a sandwich in the other hand, right? Like this is definitely feasting football area.
It's a classic kind of New England state, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about Maryland, because and then we're talking about the Chesapeake Bay area, right? That's definitely seafood territory, right? So anytime you're thinking about an area like this, you're thinking seafood. And for me, getting in and looking at it, it's all about crab. It's time to talk about crab. Yeah. So this is an area that is really known for its blue crab, right? So crab cakes, crab dip, just steamed crab spiced with Old Bay, sort of like we were talking last week with the old
seafood boil.
Seafood boil, right? Like just putting all that together. But we're gonna mix it up a little. So whether you're doing like a nice crab dip or like a nice crab pretzel combo, there's so many great potential things. A crab soup, Maryland style, tomato-based veggie crab soup, right? Like, hello.
I hope that tastes better than it sounds.
That does, yes. Of course, I was talking about the creamy crab dip, crab fries sprinkled with Old Bay and drizzled with cheese sauce. And you know what? Like, you've just got all this seafood. Crab cake sliders, right? Maybe, be an excellent one with a little Old Bay aioli. I'm just thinking those are kind of the flavors. And you know what? Let's talk about Baltimore. Like, that's where the Old Bay flavor was created in Baltimore.
What is Old Bay?
What's that? Well, it's a combination of a bunch of spices, right? That just really accents it. We're going to put a recipe up online.
All right,
for that.
I like that.
So if anyone wants to mix their own Old Bay spice, it's used on food and everything. Also, you know what? Like Maryland is known for the Smith Island cake, right? Which is a nice thinly yellow cake, about 7 to maybe 11 layers.
Okay.
Traditionally done with chocolate fudge frosting layered between each one of those.
So it's like a vanilla cake with
yellow cake, right? So sort of that style, then layered up with like nice and chocolatey fudge frosting. You can do other combinations on that one, but that's a real classic one.
That's a good football food. Like you just take a slice of cake with you and you're good.
Exactly. And then of course I've been talking about char grilling, right? So I know we've been talking about seafood, and this is where I went for the pick of the week because I wanted to talk about charcoal pits, outside the stadium when we're grilling up, that sort of working class roots tailgate fare. And I really wanted to do the nice pit beef sandwich because I think that really is iconic for this area. So what we're talking about is a beautiful roast of beef cooked off really hot, so either top round or inside round, done up really hot, high heat in the charbroil, and then super thinly sliced. And then maybe keeping it as basic as possible, maybe a little bit of horseradish to go with it. And that's your sandwich in a nice white Kaiser bun.
I feel like there's a good competition between like a Philly steak sandwich and this. Like a New
Philly,
England.
We're going to throw some cheese and onions and peppers. This one's all about the meat.
Yeah. But I feel like there's a good food rivalry going on with these meat sandwiches.
Says
the vegetarian.
When you're doing this stuff, hey, watching a game, you need a lot of protein, so this is the way to go, right? And of course, we can totally pair this with a whole bunch of things, especially we're talking Old Bay and really connect that. So doing a little shredded cabbage and doing an Old Bay slaw, a little mayonnaise and that. And then, of course, doing some French fries, maybe those crab dip French fries and stuff just to go alongside. So I'm just thinking in Baltimore, eat just like the team plays, right? Bold, smoky, loud, and loyal. Right?
Oh, there it is. There it is.
So hitting that warm grill with that nice charcoal flavor that just goes into everything. So
Right.
I just think it's just a lovely dish. So that was sort of my shots for the pick of the week is the pit beef sandwich.
Well, it all sounds really good, but I think I'll stick to the fries.
You can have the fries.
Thank you.
All right. So we've gone on food.
Yes.
Let's finish off with a little bit of fantasy. What are
Yes.
we doing in fantasy? What are the picks? Who are the people you want to pull on the Ravens to be on your fantasy team?
Well,
right?
I think it's, kind of goes back to what we talked about a bit earlier. You're definitely going, Jackson is an obvious choice if you need a running back. If you're looking at the Ravens, those are solid picks, 100%. But I think my theory, and this kind of takes us back a few episodes where I drafted quite a few fantasy quarterbacks, because I find that they're kind of going to make or break your team. Last week was the perfect example of my theory because it was week 8. I had basically all of my quarterbacks had a bye week. So I did not do very well whatsoever. Probably, honestly, one of my worst weeks of fantasy football ever in terms of points. That was 100% on me. Did not look at the bye weeks, and it proved me right, unfortunately. This week, however, I was smart and I listened to my own advice. And I took Jared Goff and I put him on the bench. And I took Matthew Stafford and I put him back on. And that worked out very, very well. It was a very good week for Stafford. It's been a very good year for Stafford in terms of fantasy points. 100% would go with him. Any of the really good quarterbacks, for sure. I had Mahomes this week and I only got, I think, 10 fantasy points. So, there's always going to be those weeks for sure. Of
course, yeah.
But I think you can't go wrong by sort of looking at the leaderboard at this point in the season, seeing which teams are doing well, who the quarterbacks are. If you can still get them, trade for them. Certainly not a bad situation to be in if you kind of follow that. It sort of seems like some of the regular players, like Christian McCaffrey's been getting a ton of fantasy points on the ground. Those sorts of players doing really, really well. Just one player that I really wanted to bring a little bit of attention to here actually is, Jackson was injured, unfortunately, for 2 or 3 weeks because of a calf injury. So I know people had to sort of shuffle around their fantasy rosters a little bit, but speaking of, his replacement, I mentioned about that is Joe Flacco. Oddly enough, I know I was joking with one of the other fantasy managers earlier of the year, like who's going to take Joe Flacco? And oddly enough, he's surprisingly gotten a few fantasy points here or there. So if you have him on your roster, I wouldn't be afraid of playing him as well. And rookie Jackson Dart for the New York Giants. He has gotten the start against Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was benched. Dart started and not a shabby performance as well. So I'm, again, huge fan, quarterback driven. If you can get them on your roster, you're not doing bad at all.
Nice. Well, that's great. So let's just do a little recap here of what we've been talking about today. So out in the league, it's time to still be open to who could be at the final, because I think everyone's sort of just keeping right down the middle.
Absolutely. Again, some of the headlines, just surprising how some of the leaders are doing. Kansas City, the Lions, their performances maybe aren't as strong as everybody thought they might be. But again, you're still halfway through the season. Lots of football to be played. Lots of things to happen. Injuries, unfortunately, do happen. That can certainly affect a team. So still a long time to go before we're making predictions.
That's right. And then the Baltimore Ravens, what do we have to say about them for today?
I think Lamar Jackson, as long as he stays healthy, and like I said, he had a minor injury, albeit, but it did affect the team a little bit. As long as he stays healthy, make sure he doesn't get hit too hard, they can definitely go deep yet again. Strong
deep into
team.
Playoffs for sure.
Definitely.
Again.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then, of course, when we're talking sandwiches down in Baltimore, even as much as I love the crab cakes and the blue crab, I still went with the old charcoal pit beef sandwich.
That sounds delicious.
How can you go wrong with that one?
The vegetarian says it sounds
delicious. Even the
delicious.
vegetarians all about that. So anyways, and the rest of it, we want to just wish you luck with your fantasy teams.
Definitely.
We'd love to see how you're doing, and if you've made any mistakes, that's always a fun if you're remembering to always check on those bye weeks to make sure who's going to be up and who's off, and be able to trade out those guys so you can get the most possible points that are available to you.
Absolutely. And before we leave, we have one more thing to do.
It's time to bring out the spinning wheel.
My favorite.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. I'm reaching up and...
Ooh, we're sort of staying kind of in the same region, kind of not, moving over a little bit. Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh my gosh, this
Cincinnati,
should be fun.
Ohio food scene. That is not words, again, I ever thought I would say, but...
Challenge accepted.
There it is.
I'm going to get in there and see what is the pick of the week for there.
I like this.
Well, on that note, thank you for listening to the F3 podcast. And we're going to continue to give you all the details we can about football,
Fantasy,
and food. Thanks for listening.